part of this letter that was sent to the judge yesterday was a list of all the communication that the Baldoni and Wayfarer team wants from Blake Lively. I think it's about 133 points here of people and different companies that they want all communications with.
Blake Lively is really scared after Judge Lyman found out about her secret plan to stop 133 people from talking in court. These people include Bradley Cooper, TMZ reporters, and even her husband's movie director.
But there are other people on this list that I also found extremely interesting. Bradley Cooper.
The judge stopped her tricks to delay things and told her she has to give up important messages about her so-called attack plan.
And this is where it gets really interesting.
June 23rd, that's the day she finally has to sit down and answer questions under oath. She probably didn't even know what that word meant until this year. But now it's written in big letters on every whiteboard in her lawyer's office, circled and highlighted, maybe even underlined in scary red. This isn't just a small legal problem. Blake is being dragged through a lawsuit by Justin Baldoni. After he got part of his case thrown out, he came back stronger and smarter. And honestly, you can't blame him. The way Blake's team has tried to control every single paper, every message, every tiny detail. It's like watching someone try to clean the ocean with a paper towel, and surprise, it's not working. Every time she tries to control what people say, it comes back to hit her right in her perfectly made-up face.
It is so crazy to me that she filed a lawsuit accusing someone of all these things, and then she refused to show the evidence that it actually happened.
Let's talk about her legal plan, or should we say the crazy tricks she's trying to pull. Her new court papers didn't just make things worse, they dragged her best friend Taylor Swift right into the courtroom. Yes, Blake literally wrote papers that officially named Taylor as someone who knows important stuff about everything. From what happened on the movie set to creative ideas to the attack plan she's crying about in this lawsuit, and then she turned around and begged the court for special protection to keep those messages from being shared. Wait, what?
Oh, she said that Taylor knew relevant information about misconduct on the set and was able to provide information about emotional distress and the damage that it caused to her.
You don't get to shout someone's name in a lawsuit and then act dumb when the other side wants to ask questions about it. Especially not when you're the one who showed off Taylor like a flag at every promotional event. But no, Blake's team tried to convince the court that these texts didn't matter. Girl, you literally said Taylor was there with you side by side through all the drama. You're either lying now or you were lying then. Pick one. But you can't tell both stories and expect people not to notice. You're not acting in Gossip Girl anymore.
And there's a lot of talk about these text messages between Blake Lively and Taylor Swift. Blake Lively is still refusing to show them to Brian Friedman and Justin Baldoni's team.
Now here's where it gets even messier. The other side wasn't buying the nonsense and brought proof, emails, timelines, and evidence. They showed Blake had changed her legal papers after people started talking publicly about the case. And just to make things even more shady, her team canceled a scheduled phone call with the other side's lawyers and asked for that special protection instead. That's not a legal defense. That's what people do when they're panicking. Judge Lyman looked at this mess and basically said, "You think I'm stupid?" Because clearly Blake thought the court would just go along with this show.
So Brian Friedman's big argument for seeing those text messages is that he thinks that in those messages there are communications where the two of them are talking about what's going on the set of It Ends With Us.
And in speaking of shows, let's get into her biggest act yet, hiding evidence. Brian Friedman, Baldoni's lawyer, wrote a 78-page document, yes, 78 pages listing all the information Blake is completely refusing to give up. At the center of it, the now famous text messages between her and Taylor Swift, you know, the ones Blake promised would never see daylight. Her excuse? He's already seen them. Oh, really? Because both Baldoni's team and Taylor's people have said very clearly that nothing was ever handed over. Not a single message. So now we're stuck in this weird situation where Blake says she doesn't need to share the messages because the other side already saw them. Even though the other side are literally saying, no, we didn't. And somehow she expects that to work in federal court. That's not a legal argument. That's lying on a stage so big it should have fireworks. Blake's own story is destroying itself. Even more laughable is how this goes against everything she's said publicly. Remember when she gushed in interviews about how Taylor was there for her through the chaos of filming It Ends With Us? About how they leaned on each other and supported each other during that toxic time? And now she wants the We're led to believe there's nothing in those messages worth seeing. Come on. Either they're just chat logs about brunch and funny memes, or there's something way more damaging. And the way she's holding onto them like they're nuclear codes tells us exactly which one it is. Billboard even talked about the circus, pointing out that emotional distress claims, which Blake used to push hard, actually need to be backed up by proof. You know, actual evidence that you suffered in a real way. That's why those texts matter. If she was texting Taylor laughing about the whole mess, or worse, admitting the attack campaign was made up, then that's game over for her side. But instead of telling the truth, she's holding those texts hostage and praying nobody pushes harder. They're pushing and she's breaking.
And it says here that Taylor Swift's text could reveal whether Blake Lively suffered actual distress. Although she has dropped the big claims about emotional distress, emotional distress is still a part of the other claims, if that makes any sense.
Now let's talk about what this all says about whether people can trust her. It's disappearing fast. Judge Lyman already ruled against her on several requests and basically said what everyone else is thinking. She's stalling and her excuses make no sense. And it's not just one or two problems. This entire case is now a web of lies avoiding the truth. And story changes. Every time she opens her mouth or files new papers, she makes things worse. This isn't how someone acts when they have nothing to hide. This is what people do when they know their case can't survive the truth. And Blake, she's treating this courtroom like it's an audition, trying to put on a show instead of giving facts. But there's no script here, no kind lighting, and definitely no PR team in the jury box. You can't just play the victim when you want to win. Your own paperwork tells a different story. She built her career on controlling her image. But now that same obsession is choking her believability in court. From begging the court to ignore her own legal papers to refusing to hand over messages. That could kill her emotional distress claims to spinning in circles over whether Taylor Swift was involved. It's all falling apart, and June 23rd, that might be the day it all explodes.
And they think that the evidence for that lays in these text messages and communications between Taylor and Blake. They have already told Blake's team that they haven't seen any of the texts, they haven't seen any of the communications.
And because, when she finally sits down under oath with the threat of lying charges hanging over every word, there's no PR magic or publicist damage control that can save her. The lies, the contradictions, the deleted proof, it's all going to come back. And for someone who spent years pretending to be untouchable, Blake Lively is about to learn that the courtroom doesn't care about her style. It cares about evidence. And right now, all the evidence says she's full of lies.
Blake Lively is terrified to show this, and to me that says that she knows there's something in there that they can use, and that's why she's refusing to show it to them.
You thought Blake Lively dragging Taylor Swift into this lawsuit was bad? Get ready, because that was just the warm-up. Let's talk about the 133 people and companies that Blake is trying to keep quiet. Yeah, 133. That's not a witness list, that's a full Hollywood phone book. Ryan Friedman's team is now demanding to see Blake's messages with this huge list of names. And honestly, it's not hard to see why she's panicking. Because when you're that busy playing puppet master behind the scenes, the last thing you want is someone pulling on the strings in court. So who exactly is on this list? Try Bradley Cooper for starters. What does Blake have to say to him that matters to this case? No one knows, but clearly it's enough to land him on a legal hit list.
Bradley Cooper. They want all communication Blake Lively had with Bradley Cooper.
And Bradley Cooper, you age. They want all the messages Blake Lively had with Bradley Cooper. Then we've got a bunch of TMZ reporters. Now that's interesting because TMZ doesn't just publish stories, they publish narratives. Which means the court wants to know whether Blake's team was feeding them the lines all along. Also flagged is Isabel Farah, the film's marketing director. Her name keeps showing up in connection to questionable media decisions, particularly the kind that looks suspiciously planned.
They also want all communication that Blake Lively's team had with TMZ reporters. A couple of different TMZ reporters. So now we might find out who planted that story.
Oh, and let's not forget Jenny Slate, because apparently Blake needed her on speed dial too, for reasons that remain completely unclear until the texts come out, of course. And then there's Liz Plank, the podcast host who dropped Justin Baldoni like a bad habit, literally 2 hours after the New York Times article came out. That timing wasn't just suspicious, it was like surgery, and now Blake's legal team is being asked to hand over all messages with her. If that wasn't a PR attack, it was the best accidental coincidence of the decade.
And they want all communications with Jenny Slate. and also a reporter from the Daily Mail.